All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Behind the Back podcast. We are your hosts. I am Marcos Conan Negron. Beside me here, as always, is Ben, the Jet Rets. Ben, how are you, brother? I know we just talked like an hour ago. How are we doing?
I'm all good, man. I'm ready to talk some football.
That's right. In our last episode, we were talking all NBA, and again, we're recording on July 11th, so this is going to be a little bit. We're doing this in advance for Monday because I will be on vacation in North Carolina, enjoying time with my family and my wife. It's going to be great. So we had a lot that we actually needed to catch up on. So we're doing it in a two-parter. So this is the second part of it. So let's talk football, Ben. It's the Niners' time to shine, right? The receiver show is out now, and the Brandon Aiyuk talks are going great, right?
Yeah, they're going great. Let's put it this way: the Niners and their person that they have to pay, it's all going to plan. Let's put it that way.
Okay, so let's talk about this plan, right? Because if anyone's been on social media, Brandon Aiyuk has been pretty public about his plan. So let's lay it out for everyone who might have missed out on what he's been doing out here.
Yeah, well, the latest and greatest of the Brandon Aiyuk 49ers, I guess you'd call it contract negotiation. So Brandon took to TikTok a little less than a week ago and posted a video that was some Washington Commander film from one of their practice sessions, training camps. And that's a massive no-no. You don't, first of all, like as an NFL player, even for your own team, you're not supposed to post training camp material. Like that kind of stuff is not supposed to be out there. A few years back, Diamador Lenore got in trouble for posting something that was from a training camp. And the reason he got in trouble was they were doing contact drills, contact training, and they weren't supposed to do contact training at that point in the season or the off season. Kyle Shanahan got like a $50,000 fine, and the Niners got like a $300,000 fine or something crazy like that. So obviously these kind of things are frowned upon, not just from the standpoint of they're not necessarily legal per your contractual rights, but it's also one of those situations you can put your team in jeopardy. I'm looking at this video that Brandon posts, and I'm trying to figure out his angle. Like, it doesn't, if I'm the 49ers, I'm looking at Brandon posting this video. I'm like, what are you doing right now? Like,
yeah,
you're not, do you want to go to Washington? Because I'm pretty sure Washington doesn't like what you just did. Like,
yeah,
you just posted their material out there on the internet, and you still play for the 49ers and have one more year under your contract. And your boy, who is a new player for our organization, is now going to be in the doghouse with us for a week while we figure out that whole situation. So he not only hurts himself in this situation, he kind of hurts his brother in that. And it's just kind of interesting. I'm really trying to figure out the motive behind why he would do that. So it's weird.
Yeah, and what made this even more interesting was just a few days prior, he was posting videos of himself back at the facility, like they had just had the meeting with the 49ers, and like things were seeming like, okay, well, we'll handle this down the road. And what's even worse is, like Ben mentioned, the guy he was referring to is Jaden Daniels, for those who don't know, the rookie quarterback out of LSU, and Brandon Aiyuk's former teammate at Arizona State 5 years ago. So what's even more frustrating, I think, if I were a Niners fan, I guess from an outside perspective, what's kind of annoying about this is like the fact that he would influence another player to do something that, like, especially a younger player, a rookie who he was friends with, to do something that's going to get him in trouble. Like, that's just not a good look. I think the weird part for me is like, Brandon Aiyuk doesn't have any leverage. Like, I don't know. I've been watching it this whole time. Like, his play last year, his leverage was at the beginning of the offseason. Like, oh, his importance is necessary. And then you take a look at everything that happened in the past year. People do their deep dives of the stats and everything. And you know, then a show like Receiver comes out and it's telling that it's Deebo Samuel and George Kittle, two of the other receivers who I like. It's very interesting that the it Brandon Ayuk's timing couldn't be worse, and his method couldn't be worse. Like he's trying to get the public on his side on social media, but he's acting like a jackass. So
Yeah.
so he wants more. So it's interesting and it's frustrating. From like I'm watching this, I'm like, why does it have to be this way? Like, and if he said that he got inspiration from Deebo Samuel, I don't think Deebo would have said, oh, play another team's playbook, you know what's coming. Like, he also could have said, hey, they signed me in August, like, just be patient, dude. Like, what are we doing creating? I think Brandon Ayuk right now is kind of doing this for clout. Like, he kind of likes the attention being on him because the attention is never on him. He's always been that guy just hiding in the spotlight and contributing, but not reaping the rewards of it. Debo's a celebrity, George Kittle's a celebrity, and his quarterback is a celebrity, but Brandon Ayuk is that other guy on the very back of the stick. So it's just like it's for me to just see this every day. I'm just like, now do we even want this guy? Like, I wouldn't want this dude in my locker room, but I know the guys support him and it's different. And the fans are just like, why are you doing this, dude? So that's how I
It,
see things.
and you're close. Obviously he's a part of the team I love and adore, and so the feeling
Right,
is
right, totally.
similar, but I'm a little easier to forgive, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but no, man, like talking from a fan perspective here for a second, like you heard me last year and on the pod, and then the year before that a little bit off the pod, talk about how high I was on Brandon Aiyuk and how I really want him to step into that wide receiver one role, and I want the Niners to give him that role because I do think, especially with a dude like Purdy who can sling it the way he does, like if we start throwing the ball more, we're probably going to be a little bit better. Well, then he goes and pulls something like this, and this whole it brings a new perspective for me where I'm almost feeling like Brandon has gone through the dance with the 49ers twice to the Super Bowls, you know, and or NFC Championship games, and done this whole like almost made it dance a few times now, where it's like I would rather just get my money right now, and then at the back end of my career try and land a ring. And I think there's an aspect there that you touched on about leverage,
Mm-hmm.
that he doesn't have any leverage on the 49ers right now, which is probably why a contract isn't done. Because the 49ers aren't necessarily willing to just shell out a whole bunch of money when they're still trying to gun for a title. And you got all these guys to pay coming up, like we talked about. So I think there's a leverage aspect. I think there could be a form of, we talk about how wide receivers ultimately are divas and they want the spotlight, they want the attention, they want the love, they want the respect, they want the money. And I mean, we see a guy who should be a wide receiver one on a vast majority of the teams in the NFL, who's probably the third option right now on the 49ers. Do I think he should be that? No, but he is. And that's how he's been utilized up until this point. And so he knows what he wants to be, he knows what he wants to get, and he's making it very clear to the entire world that he's disgruntled. And whether it's money, whether it's role, whether it's both, you know, it's left to be actually said. Um, but all this stuff, man, it's a whole bunch of noise, and it's frustrating because I love Brandon, I really do, and I still do. He's such a fun player to watch. He's funny. I want him on this team, but the things that he's doing this offseason are concerning, because how can I know for sure that if we re-sign you for a shit ton of money that you're not going to pull something the first or second year into your contract and completely obliterate the camaraderie of the team. It's eye-opening, and it's frustrating.
Okay, well let me ask you this. You know, how much of this do you also think is like Kyle Shanahan? Because you were right on the Brandon Aiyuk breakout. You called it last year, and you were also right about something else. And it was something that I was in the side of you, like agreeing with you on the Brandon Aiyuk, breakout. There was another part that was taking shape too, and that was how important Debo still is to this offense, and what how Kyle Shanahan thinks of him and how important he may be. And you said it in the offseason when, they drafted Ricky, and even before when talking about Brandon Aiyuk, that like a schematic change would need to happen if the Niners are going to treat Brandon Aiyuk like the number one. And I guess the question now is, and I'm sure for those who have watched the Netflix show Receiver, when you're watching Debo Samuel and George Kittle, I think there's some things that could be a little telling. And again, it's what they wanted to do. And I'm sure Kyle Shanahan wouldn't have been okay with it if something that was going to stir the pot was going to be listed, right? But I'm not going to spoil anything for those who haven't seen anything. Highly regarded show. Just recommend that everyone check it out. It's cool how they do it. But there was something in there that suggests that Debo is much more important to this team than I think fans were like almost forgetting, or maybe from the outside, like maybe taking for granted again. Because I was one of those people where I'm like, oh, Debo's useful, but he's also not healthy all the time because of his play style. But when he's there, when he's available, it seems as if he's more important than those who don't pay that much attention would like to think. So how much do you think is Kyle Shanahan and Debo like involved in the Niners' way of thinking about this contract for Brandon Aiyuk?
I'm not sure. I think it has more to do with. That's tough, man. I really do think like there's probably a side of it that's like Kyle's playbook is 50% at least involving Debo. And I came on here week 6 and talked about when he got injured against the Browns. I talked about how crucial he is for the team. And then he missed the next few weeks, and I talked about how major Trent and Debo are to the team. Well, if it was George and he goes down, I'm having the same conversation. Probably not saying that he's extremely vital to the playbook and all the plays revolve around him and yada yada, but I'm still talking about how vital he is to the game, to the scheme of the 49ers. Brock goes down in the NFC Championship, obviously having a conversation because that's quarterback. Any of these guys, choose any of those number of stars that the 49ers have and pull them out for a few games. You're going to see a massive regression in schematic ability. And that has a lot to do with the way that Kyle and Lynch have been able to keep the core together for as long as they have and develop such a vast playbook around all these guys. Now, with a situation like Brandon, I think there's probably a good chance that the reason they're so hesitant to get a deal done right now is because they're like, dude, you haven't been a wide receiver one for this team. Why would we give you the wide receiver one money right now?
Right.
When our number one receiver is a guy who can play all over the field. And then we have another guy who we can pretty much throw in any position in Christian McCaffrey as well. And we have a tight end who can catch pretty much any ball that's thrown at him and block all the way down the field. And he's just massive for the locker room. Like all these leaders in different positions, not just statistically, but also leadership in the locker room. And Devo took on a new role this season of being a captain, and that was something that he hasn't earned up until this last year. And he took on this captain role, and with exception to like a few games where his competitive nature got the better of him, he showed that leadership. And I haven't really seen that leadership out of Brandon. And obviously, he's not in a situation where he needs to lead the team, in that way. But Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's a leader. He's a captain out there. Justin Jefferson's a captain out there. Like, all these guys who are getting massive paychecks and wide receiver one money, they're playing not just a massive role for their team on the field, but they're also playing it in the locker room as well. And I think that that's something like when you have so many stars like this, and you have so many guys who are just thrown into a bucket full of one scheme that should be winning Super Bowl after Super Bowl after Super Bowl, it's hard at that point when it comes time to pay somebody like a Brandon Aiyuk who thinks he's worth so much money. It's like, well, look at what these other guys around you are doing. So that's a really tough answer. Tough question for me to answer.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole situation is so touchy because, again, I say all this, but at the same time, I will take Brandon back on this team in a heartbeat. Like,
right.
Let's get the deal done because Brandon, we are a much better team with Brandon on the field. He's one of those guys you take out of the game. We're not better without him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think one thing to consider too, if you're the Niners, is you have to pay Brock next year, right? So how much of your cap do you want tied to Brock Purdy and Brandon Aiyuk?
Yeah.
And if the Niners are probably also thinking long term, like if we make this decision, who are we going to need to sacrifice to make this happen long term? And I don't know if they have that answer yet. And that's probably another reason why this is stalled, because they're probably working through all these avenues. And that's the you see, and people make it sound easy, right? Because you watch a team like the Eagles and they're paying all these dudes, and Howie just does things a certain way, right? But then you watch the Niners and people expect the Niners to be like, oh, if you watch a team like the Eagles do it, why don't the Niners do the exact same thing? And there's so many other factors that go into signing dudes, right? And I think the way the NFL set up, if your owner wants it bad enough, I think you'll have the ability to sign whoever the hell you want. Like Jerry Jones can sign whoever he wants if he was willing to shell out. But he's like, despite the branding of it all and despite how much money the Cowboys make, he's one of the cheapest owners out there. But like, had he really wanted to invest the money that he, has, because owners can do that. They can, they can flex their money a little bit easier in the NFL than they can in the NBA, because the NBA used to be that way, but that's not the case anymore. But Jeffrey Lurie, he was like, okay, I'm going to pay this extra money. I'm going to pay this extra money to sign so-and-so, or to bring so-and-so here. So I will work with this contract. Like, let's do it. And I wonder if Jed York shares that same passion, or if he's consistently okay with having a team that's just good enough, a team that's good enough to make it to the Super Bowl. But maybe, if you run into Mahomes, aren't equipped enough, because even though he could have paid a little bit more money for like one or two more dudes. I just wonder how much of that like plays a factor into anything. And it's tough. But it's tough to be the Niners. Like, it's a lose-lose anyway for whoever's involved, because Brandon's either going to look like a douche for, forcing the Niners to give him more money, and then maybe not even having a season better than what he's had last season. And then the Niners are screwed and they can't get any better, and now they're cash strapped. Or if they let go of Brandon and take a different approach with these younger guys who are in here, and then maybe just ride out Debo, then who knows? Like, it makes both sides look weird.
It does, and there's so many unanswered questions. Like when we drafted Ricky, I really thought I was onto something when I said that there's a real avenue, and there was, of us taking Ricky and then re-signing Brandon and trading Debo and changing up our scheme, because we've ran that same scheme back for 5 years now, and we've lost 2 Super Bowls against the same team who's beaten us in 2 different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And And so it felt like we're just banging our head against a wall. And so it was like, it makes sense for us to sign this guy who can be a wide receiver one on any team. And we've got a Brock Purdy contract coming up, which he's going to deserve and get a lot of money. It made sense. And there was an avenue where we move on from Debo and we shift to a completely different scheme. But here we are almost 2 months later, and there's the same questions, and that avenue is closed, because why would you wait at that point to do that kind of thing? And then obviously, yeah, things like reports and shows come out about it that just back up the points of how important Debo is to the playbook, the current playbook of the 49ers. And here we are getting closer and closer. We're 4 weeks out of basically of preseason. And Debo's still here. Brandon's still here, but wanting a contract. Like, it's weird. There's weird things going on. I think ultimately, like, I stick to it. I think ultimately Brandon's going to get his contract around 28.5.
Hopefully.
And yeah, and I think everything will work out. And once guys get paid, we've seen this similar dance before with other teams, not with the 49ers per se. But, once they get paid, they get their money, they get their attention, they settle down again. And then it's back to business as usual. It's back to trying to hoist that trophy at the end of the season. So,
And I guess for me, the part that, because I agree with everything. Once the money's signed, like, okay, we'll move on, right? And
yeah,
then it plays out on its own. I guess with the weird part about it was just like the whole Jaden Daniels of it all, the whole like you're bringing another dude into your business to try to make your own leverage. That's just like that
it's
bugs me a
cringy.
little bit. Yeah, it bugs me a little bit. And again, I like Brandon Aiyuk the player. I don't think of him any less because of he's trying to make his money. If this is the way he wants to approach it, that's fine. But yeah, it's a little weird. I do think it's best for both parties to just get this deal signed. Brandon will thrive here for the prime of his career, and the Niners will benefit from having him on the roster. Hopefully, they have a deal that makes sense. And because yeah, Brock's coming, and that's $50 million at a minimum. Like, I don't know what, just because Brock was the last pick in the draft and he's making a small amount of money doesn't mean that he's not going to go for every single penny he can get, and
As he should.
deservedly as he should. He's the quarterback. Like, that's how it works. Especially if he backs it up again this season with all the randomness of it all. So there's a lot to, again, it's the off season. Questions won't be answered until, week one. But this has definitely been an interesting saga, and definitely something that is blown way out of proportion. And
So
like,
much.
but it
It
sucks. Yeah, it sucks that this is the only thing to talk about because this is super dramatic.
That part. It's the off season. There's really nothing going on at this point. And so the only thing to really report about continuously is, well, who's searching for a contract and who's been the biggest diva out of everybody this offseason.
Yeah,
And there's
exactly.
always one guy. All right. There's always one guy.
Yeah,
And a few years ago, it was Debo. And I thought Debo was bad. Like,
yeah,
this
seriously.
situation is different. I don't even want to say like worse. It's just a lot different because the way that Debo handled things, he did some petty things, but he didn't draw another dude into his negotiations. Like, he didn't continuously take to social media and like
Yeah, that's another
grind your
thing.
team into the dust kind of thing. Like, there was a totally different way of doing it. Debo was like, I mean, if you ain't going to pay me, trade me. And it was straight up it. And of course, it was blown out of proportion when ultimately it was like, I want this much. If you guys can't give me this much, like, I want to trade.
Yeah,
And that's me requesting a trade. And then guess what? He got paid. And guess what? Nick Bosa got paid. And here we are with Brandon. And guess what? He's going to get paid. It's a matter of time. Off season, nothing happens. Right now, this is the thing to talk about. But this whole thing is just like waves of up and down because Brandon, he's back in San Fran right now. A couple days ago, he was with the kids, with some local kids out at San Francisco University. and he was doing some kind of like a camp or something, whatever, um, with the community. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's like he's still, and he has expressed time in and time out his desire to stay in San Francisco. He said that's his number one spot. He's like, I don't want to leave. I don't want them to trade me. But then 18 hours later, he comes around and says something entirely different. And
Yeah.
so it's so weird. I just want to get it done and get this behind us, because anymore is just gonna muddy the waters and fog the air going down the road.
Yeah, and that's not the energy you want to start
Mm-mm.
a season coming off of a Super Bowl loss. Like you need everybody on the same page. It takes a lot of effort to come back when you're the second place team. Like this team is capable, but some of these happy-go-lucky guys might piss Brandon off if he's not paid. He's gonna be like, "Shut the heck up, dude! Like you're happy over here with your money, and I don't have mine." And players think about that when especially when he believes he's a positive contributor, which he is. So I'm not saying like he's
Yeah.
thinking something incorrectly, but it's you don't want that energy. That's I guess the main takeaway from it.
I just kind of thought about, I wonder if there's an angle where, like, the reason that Brandon's doing this is because of what happened in the Super Bowl kind of thing, like where his emotions were so high in to backtrack for a second, in that documentary on Netflix, Receiver, the Niners, it alludes to how confident they are all season long. Okay, so get back to it. Like, Brandon's super confident, the team's super confident all season long. They make it to the big stage where they ultimately knew they were going to get to, and they run into another wall again and lose. And I do wonder if that kind of emotional, like, just truck hit Brandon, and and kind of plays into what I said earlier of, just give me my money now, and I'll worry
Yeah,
about the title on the back end of my career.
yeah, and the Eagles showed, that it takes like there could be chinks in the armor. It just takes one nice hit, and everything could fall apart if
Yeah,
not everyone's on the same page. So we don't want you don't want any weak links on the team in terms of who doesn't feel like they're not doing what they deserve, because all these players, it's a gladiator sport. Like these guys want their safety, they want their guarantee, the protection. Like I get that, and he's putting his all on the line for the Niners, and he wants to continue doing so, but he wants to do it at the right price because it's going to cost something. Like there's always a risk to it. So I completely understand his side of things. I wish he would have done a little bit more maturely as a true leader. There's so many better ways to approach this conversation. Um, and you could have used social media, but like that's fine, but like differently. You don't bring your friends
yeah.
into it. You like don't make other people have to deal with your problems. And it's just hopefully this can just get swept under the rug, and it's not that big of a deal. So, hopefully for the Niners it all works out in that sense.
Time will tell.
Yeah. So another topic, and speaking of like documentaries, obviously Hard Knocks happens every year. They did a pre-draft or draft process Hard Knocks with the New York Giants, and they went through the early stages of free agency, and obviously Saquon Barkley was a huge talking point of this because Saquon was their main free agent going into this, and obviously now he is a Philadelphia Eagle. But I liked these Hard Knocks because it kind of gave a little insight on kind of what happened and how Saquon even became available in the first place. And the Giants were put in that tough spot where they had to make that Brandon Aiyuk level decision. Obviously, Saquon is a veteran and he's been there a little bit longer, and this was for a different kind of contract. But Saquon, I don't think he was asking anything insane. He got a market level contract, 12 million from Philly, and I thought it was interesting how Joe Shane, the GM, it gave insight on their conversations. Like, oh, do we let Saquon test the water? Do we let Saquon test the waters? Is anyone going to be out there paying him 12 million? And it kind of gave us that process of like the GM just doesn't do it by himself. He has a team with him who's discussing, and they're like, someone with money will probably pay Saquon. And I don't think they anticipated that it was the Eagles. So it's cool, kind of, especially from a petty,
Yeah,
I hate the Giants standpoint. Like
yeah,
that's kind of cool to see them make a decision that benefits my team at the end of the day. But it does. illustrate a little bit of the tough decisions that teams have to make. It's not simple. It's not as simple as like, oh, we want this guy, we're gonna go get him. And what does keeping a dude that's important to us, who might not be exactly what we need for the future, like that? It was a tough decision, and they had the whole conversation with Saquon. And I thought, so the GM called. They showed a video where he actually called Saquon, saying, "Hey, you can test the free agency market. Um, go see what your value is, and then you can come back to us, and we can talk and see if you're within the value." And I thought the funny part about that call was he asked, "Can I get a guarantee that you'll tell us something?" And Saquon was like circle back, and he's like, yeah, and he's like, yeah, yeah, of course, like I'll circle back. But I thought it was funny that you had to check to make sure that like he was gonna give you like, hey, don't forget about us. Like I know you're gonna talk to the teams, but like talk to us too. I thought it was a little level of desperation where I thought that was pretty funny. I was like, you sound like a little clingy over there, but you're also not
Well,
willing to treat him the way that you should. So
yeah,
I thought it
and
was funny.
that's the problem is the Giants have been kind of a dysfunctional organization for a while now,
Yeah.
and even the later stages of Manning, and I think that they've just seen they've taken so many shots on the chin at that point that it was like, can we get a guarantee you're not gonna punch us on the chin
Yeah.
like the
Well,
last
yeah.
4, 5, 6 years,
The last guarantee they made was signing Daniel Jones, and it bit them. And they made
right?
the wrong decision. They could have signed Saquon, or they could have signed Daniel. And
Yeah,
that's what they said on the Hard Knocks. They're like, we're stuck with Daniel. We're not stuck with Daniel, but like we made the Daniel decision
yep,
versus Saquon, and now we're here because of it. So we need to try and see if this Daniel Jones things works. So we need to invest in an offensive line. We need to invest in receiver. And they did. They partially did those things. But Saquon is a piece that's valuable, and the Eagles are going to be able to make the most of him. But that's the intricate part of the business that it's so hard to manage, and it's not easy
it
being a
is.
GM.
No,
Um, so that's why I have way more respect for like Howie and teams like the Niners who are able to consistently be great, and that's something that's hard to do, and that's something that doesn't last forever. So it's definitely something to not take for granted when you have something that works really well. Like if you're Houston, like a team that's up and coming, if you're Green Bay, like enjoy the situation you have right now, because it's definitely not going to last forever unless the ownership and stuff is continuous. And that's something that, you know, you can never be aware of. Like Washington is in the middle of that because now they have new owners and they're trying to establish this new identity. That takes time, and that's not something that happens overnight. So, but they got out of a really toxic situation. So, and they were a hated team because of their toxic owner. It was very much
yep,
like a Sacramento situation. Like the
hmm
owners were horrible, didn't care about the team, and got traded to hopefully a partner that actually does care about them, and that's something that Washington needs, and they're set up for a bright future. They did a good job. I
yeah.
like what they've done, and they're going to be frisky. Um, they rebounded pretty well, but that's something like when you see that in the Giants, and I'm like, this is a cool look. It's a bad look on the Giants for the most part of it all. Like it does, it's a tough look, especially because he ends up on Philly at the end of it. That's what makes it worse.
Yep.
So you're seeing the preview of like, and it'll just be interesting to see. Hopefully, Saquon, the goal is this team for the Eagles to reach where they want to reach this year. Saquon needs to be what we're paying him, and Saquon needs to be a top level running back that we hope behind a legit offensive line and with way better weapons around him and a better quarterback that hopefully that ceiling can be reached before time runs out. It's almost he's on a DeMar DeRozan timeline for Philly too, so it's very interesting.
There's a lot of disrespect, and we'll talk about this as the weeks go on here, and we inch closer to the season. But there's a lot of disrespect being thrown towards the Eagles right now. Like PFF didn't even have them in the top 10 for offenses in the league,
Yeah.
and NFC wise, like they were down there, not anywhere low, but it was just like it's so interesting to see like kind of where the disrespect is being thrown right now.
Yeah, I think that when it comes to like I'm okay with this. I want to be looked at as the underdog. I want everyone to think we're overrated because it's just these signings or whatever. Um, I think that the Eagles are they are a very boomer bust team. We're banking on a lot of things working when there's a lot of new things happening, and that doesn't always work. And if it doesn't work, then there's still going to be more change because Sirianni's job is on the line. Jalen Hurts' job is on the line. Like, there are things that are important this year that if things don't go the way they should, if we're not winning a playoff game at least this year, like, it's going to be a massive disappointment. Like, we need to do better than we did last year because we have the pieces. We don't have excuses, and we're in this opportunity now to be better. And Saquon's a huge part of that. So it was cool to get an inside look on that Hard Knocks stuff because I like the way it provides a deeper meaning. It's different when it's the front office versus players, because players can, when they see the cameras, they can act however the hell they want. But like in the GM, the front office, their job moves and their job matters even more so. Because one wrong decision and they're gone. They're the ones that go first, not the player. So it's very interesting to me.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So, do we have any final thoughts? I think, we kind of touched up on some of the offseason news. It's going to be pretty quiet here for the next couple weeks before August 1st and preseason starts and the NFL season goes nuts. But training camp is soon. I think it's coming up here shortly. So, there will be talks from there. So, maybe we can talk some position battles or whatever we think is important from there.
Yeah, I'm just stoked. We're in the kind of the home stretch before we hit the home stretch, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm still depressed after that Super Bowl loss, but I'm ready to watch some Niner football again soon. So
yeah, that's right. Same here. I'm ready for Philly. I'm ready for what's coming, and I'm ready to just take a look at some of these teams and kind of gauge, because I think now that the offseason's calmed down, not many more moves are left to be made. It's going to be easier to evaluate like who might actually be legit. And training camp's going to provide a lot of things because who's going to get hurt, who's going to look really good, who's going to look different, which teams are going to stand out. And I'm excited for preseason because I don't think it's going to show too much versus like summer league in the NBA where like these guys are actually going to play a ton of minutes right away. Basketball's just a little different. For preseason, you're like, I can only throw my best guys out here for a quarter or a series, and like, okay, no one gets hurt now. So it's a little harder to gauge preseason, but watching football is just so much fun. So I can't wait for preseason and seeing which young guys kind of step up. So.
Yes, sir.
All right. So this was part 2 of episode 49 of the Behind the Back podcast. You can hit us up at behindthebackpod13@gmail.com. Hit us up on any of our social medias, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, X, all that fun jazz. And if you're a YouTube listener, like, subscribe, give us a follow. Any audio listeners, rate and review the show. We really appreciate it. We're almost at episode 50. We're going to try and plan something super sick for the 50th episode and provide more good content. But I'm going to go on vacation and I'm going to enjoy my time. So I am Marcos Conan. Beside me here, as always, is
Benny the Jet. Enjoy your vacation, brother.
Thank you, brother. All right. We will talk to you guys in a couple weeks. It'll probably be, week after next. So we'll figure that out. Peace.